Hi everybody, welcome to part 3. I just want to say a very quick thank you up front to the thousands of people watching my videos and the people who are subscribing. I'm blown away. Now, I've already uploaded this video once and I've taken it down because I realized I missed something out which is absolutely essential, and it's this. Most Partscasters fail or disappoint because people buy necks. And the neck comes with frets in, they strap it to the body, they string it up, and they're instantly disappointed. The main reason for that is you can't do that. You've got to get the neck straight first, then you've got to level it, and then you've got to hone and polish and smooth off the ends of these frets. This is the #1 reason why Partscasters are a disappointment to so many people. And this video that I've done is all about that, all about leveling and crowning and pointing. So please, watch part 3. Hello everyone, welcome back to part 3, back in the workshop. So this time what we're going to be doing is putting some frets on this. So the first thing we need to do is to get the neck off. We need to clean all this up just to make sure there's no bits of dust in here, get these slots completely empty. Those of you who've watched my stuff before will know I'm a huge fan of cabinet scrapers. Cabinet scrapers are, obviously for scraping cabinets and scraping necks and doing shaping and what have you, but because these thin ones are so hard and sharp, they're really good for just dragging through the slots and getting any debris out of them. You can also use a really sharp X-Acto knife or a scalpel, as we would call them over here. I'm just knocking these ends out because these ends are actually blocked on some of them. I think they were just dressed a little bit with a bit of rosewood dust to neaten up the ends, but I need those knocked out, I think, because I'm going to redo it. I use this sometimes. It's a spare hacksaw blade from my fret slot saw. Just gently running that up and down the slot cleans it out. Lovely. Let's talk fret wire. This is the fret wire I use. It's called Boston. I get it off eBay. The vintage specs for Fender are something like 2mm wide, 1mm deep, and that's just sort of vintage Fender fret wire. If we're trying to create an authentic vintage style instrument, then we should be using vintage style fret wire. The internet is rammed with people fretting guitar nets, and I don't think my method is any different to anyone else's. The only thing I do is I actually cut each fret as I need it. I don't cut them all in advance. The advantage of that is I find it less boring because I'm doing a lot of operations one after the other rather than doing 21 of all the same thing. The other thing is that you can actually crowd the neck because as you go up the neck it gets quite close together. So if you've already banged all the frets in, it can be actually quite difficult to get your cutters in to cut the fret ends off. So I just do it as I go. I find it more fun. It keeps my brain alive longer. Stick it across, measure it, leave yourself a little bit of leeway and cut it. Once you cut your first fret, you need to decide whether you're going to cut a little bit of the tang off. Now what you can do is take a pair of fret tang clippers and you can nibble off part of the underside of the tang so that the tang doesn't go all the way to the end of the slot in the guitar. So I quite like doing it. I think it looks neater on the ends. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it into my clippers, and I've just taken off just here at the end about 3 or 4 millimeters of the tang. So only the end of the fret will poke off the end of the fretboard. And I'm going to do the same to the other end, which at the moment is still there. Popping into my tang nipper. And there we go, I've just taken off the end. You don't have to do this. I just feel it looks a bit neater on the side. In the little hole that's left in the side, the slot, what you can do is you can mix up some super glue or some wood glue with a bit of rosewood and just fill that end and make it all look nice and clean on the edge. A little bit poking out each end, a little tap on either end. So there we go, first fret in, all looking good. Can't see anything poking out at the end there, so that's why we cut that bit of tang off. We need to trim that, use our cutters, 45 degrees rather than, don't do it flat because you're going to have to sand that off anyway. Do it 45 degrees, that one, 45 degrees on the other side, fret, done. Great stuff. So that's my second one in. Now I'm not going to knock this one in with a hammer like I did the last one. I'm going to use a fret press. It's just a 1-ton press which I got from Toolstation or somewhere like that for about 40 bucks. So it's not a big deal in terms of money, but it does give you consistency. So let's just pop that in there, line it up, and then push. There we go, all pressed in. Whew, last fret to go. Just got a little tiny bit of spare left. So let's try and make this a good one. Chop it off, not too tight. Remove the tang. Good. Tap it in, make sure that it fits. Yeah, that's good. Tap it in, just to locate it. Then into the press. And it's in. That's our last fret. Trim off at 45. Trim off at 45. That's it. Oh, now these edges are absolutely vicious. They've got to come off as soon as possible. Now I've got this block which has got a file set into it at 45 degrees. I lay this flat part on the fretboard and then just run it down the edge, and it holds it over at an angle which will take the edge off the frets perfectly. Okay, I've got to be honest with you. This might be great for beginners. It might be great for lots of people. It might be great for a lot of pros. I don't like them. I don't know why, I just can't get on with it. It leads me in the wrong direction because you can't see this file when the wood's over the top, and you can end up smashing over the body and taking the finish off. Also, the files that come with these things are, I don't know what they are, what quality they are, I don't know what tooth pitch they are or anything. So I use these. These are just really good engineering files that I've snapped the handle, the spike off, and I find these far superior. Oh yeah, I mean, this is just a better file all round. It cuts quicker, it cuts cleaner, it cuts smoother. This is a smooth cut file. When you've angled this edge, you end up with still these sharp bits on the edge of the frets, and you use this tiny fret end dressing file to get those bits off. It's got a flat bit which has got no teeth on it, and the other side is slightly rounded, and all you do is you go up to the edges and just take off those nasty little tangs which have arrived. Some people do all one side first, some people go up and do one fret at a time like this and then do the other side. It's entirely up to you. Now the flat rolly curved bit you can use to sort of swing over the top of it like this without damaging the fretboard, and just to round off the fret ends. So we've taken off the nasty spade-like shapes on the end, and I'm just going to run a bit of 1000 grit over this now, just to clear up the ends. So before we go much further, what we need to do is make sure this neck is absolutely straight and flat. So put a level on, yep, and I can see, yeah, this neck has a slight belly bow in it, so we need to adjust the truss rod to get this absolutely straight. If we don't straighten the neck before we start doing any work on the frets, we'll actually make an error which will be fixed into the neck forever. Bad news. Tiny quarter turn. Yeah. Now we're flat. Now we can proceed. So important.
It's worth mentioning that the back bow was probably caused by the fretting process itself. Adding material to the fretboard will make the fretboard longer.
I'm just applying this to the very tip of the fret. Being careful not to get any on the fretboard, on the sides of the frets. Just run it on the tops of the frets. So we're all blue marked up. Then we need a 10-inch radiusing block to run across the top of all the frets to get them all absolutely flat. Now these are great. This is just a cheap-ish 10-inch block. Fantastic, but if you really want to go for it and do the whole fretboard and get it absolutely smashingly flat, this is what you want. This is a long aluminium 10-inch radiusing beam or block, and I find these are just the best. I know they're expensive. They're about, I don't know, $40, $50, 30, 40 quid. But you'll buy one and you'll use it for the rest of your career as a guitar maker. Let's have a quick look already. Yep, it's touching there, it's not touching there.
Hopefully we've got the frets in nice and consistently. That way we don't have to wear too much away. Less is more.
Okay, that's it. I think we're done. Yep. So there we have it. So all of the blue caps have gone.
Before we go any further, it's essential that we tape up that fingerboard. We've got to protect that fretboard. We've got to protect those wonderful dots.
So once you're all taped up, you're safe to go. We can start dressing those frets. I'm going to be using my trusty Z-file from Stuart McDonald. They are just great. They've got diamond encrusted and they cut like crazy. So this is the tool for me.
The classic fret file is pyramid shaped, and they're brilliant if you know how to use them. I've tried to use them, I've had limited success, and I just keep coming back to this Z file. It's just brilliant. Our objective here is just to leave the tiniest blue line on the top of each fret.
Well, through the magic of television, I've changed my shirt. No, it's the next day. We brought these to a lovely point, and this is looking great. So what we've now got to do is to shine them up, get them ready to receive their final polish, and we can start smoothing out the neck. So here we go, micro mesh. I want to just work across the frets, get all that bit of glue off, and work my way down the neck. Factory guitars generally don't have the sort of finish you can get yourself. They have a limited amount of time to spend on each instrument, so they don't go at it hammer and tongs to get a fantastic mirror finish on the frets. But we as guitar makers can, and it's amazing the difference it makes. Using these blocks is a relatively new development. In the old days we would just use flat beams and what have you, but this is a far better way of doing it. The only problem with any sort of sanding beam or abrasive is it leaves behind marks, and we need to get rid of those marks. Wrapping a bit of emery cloth around one of these abrasive rubbers is a great way to work. They're easier to hold than doing it in your hand. I think the accepted way of using micro mesh is to go up and down the fretboard and then go across the frets afterwards, and then alternate maybe once or twice on a grade, then move to a finer grade and just keep moving down through to the grades until you get to the finest, and then polish up thereafter. So I'm going to go down the fretboard to begin with, making sure to cover the edges. Very important to do the edges like this, up and down, and then across. This is really satisfying because as you go across, they begin to gleam, even with the coarse ones. One of the problems with micromesh, unfortunately, is they use colours to denote the grade. So as you work through the grades, you work through the colours, but unfortunately the colours wear off. So I don't know where I am. You just have to look at them and feel them with your fingers. You know where you are. Yeah, they're really beginning to shine now. So I think I've arrived at the last grade. I can barely feel anything on this pad at all. So this is the last one, and that will be the end of that process. And as I work across, they suddenly go like mirrors. Incredible. I think you can see that. I can. Beautiful. In guitar making, you'd have thought there would be a huge amount of sanding, and there probably is, but there should be more scraping in my opinion. The trouble with sanding is that it creates a huge amount of dust, which is bad for you. It rounds off the sides, so something like the top of the headstock here, you want this side of the headstock all nice and flat, then you want it to sweep into the neck. You want this to be nice and sharp and fit really smartly in the pocket, so don't grab a piece of sandpaper in the palm of your hand and start working it over it, because you'll round all the edges off. You'll end up with it looking like a bit of driftwood or a pebble that's been in the sea for about 6 years. So areas that you want to stay flat, stick it on a block. Think about sanding and be careful about what you're wearing away, because you can actually blur your guitar. You want it to be nice and sharp and crisp, which is why scrapers are so useful, because first of all they don't create all the dust and they give you a nice flat finish.
Okay, so everything about sandpaper. Well, that was part 3. I look forward to seeing you all at part 4. Please subscribe if you can, just to keep the momentum going. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you soon.